I'll ask you questions.
I am too.
Okay, hold on just a second. All right, Jerusalem. Emmanuel's going to help.
Oh, good.
Little Emmanuel. Okay, so this is Ruth
Asdell.
Yes. And
Gina Torres.
And they're both in the WCTU. And what does that stand for?
Women's Christian Temperance Union.
Okay, and Frances Mino was, it was a very huge, important part of her life, and I know that when Lloyd Mino retired from being a pastor, that he was, served her in every way. No, don't, it's okay. It's good right where it is. It's good right where it is. Thank you.
You have to put it up a little bit.
No.
Wait,
You,
no,
see you,
just see
now,
your face.
Okay, now you have to be up here. Okay, there. Now you can see her. Okay, so, and he served her as she went around the world, basically, to do their service. Okay, no, don't move it because I'm videotaping them right now. So we have to make it. We have to be very quiet. And we have to not move it because it has to be stay steady, okay?
I want to talk.
In just a second, okay? And I'll let you talk, okay? But first they're talking right now. How's that? Okay. Okay. So, can I start with you, Ruth? And you tell me just you know, a couple sentences about what you feel is the thing that impressed you the most about Frances and Lloyd and their joy in serving in this ministry.
Okay, when I joined the WCTU, it was a very vibrant organization, and I met Mrs. Mino and Reverend Mino. The first location was 730 Yonge Street, and in Toronto I became a member of the Toronto District WCTU. And both Mrs. Mino and Reverend Mino were totally committed to the work of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, both of them, not one but both of them. But Mrs. Mino was very methodical in the way she handled the work of the WCTU. Everything was done in order. Everything was you know, when she chaired the meetings, they would just, you know, they went from one thing to the next very swiftly and remarkably. Reverend Mino, on the other hand, and as I was telling his granddaughter today, embraced you. They didn't ask you for your background, they didn't ask you for your credentials, they didn't ask you for anything, they just wanted to, they knew that you were there, and they encouraged you. Reverend Mino was an encourager.
Oh, wow.
He encouraged, especially I was working at the time, and I would have to leave work and come to the meetings, and he would be there. And would be willing to get you a coffee, get you a tea, get you something, put you in a seat, literally embrace you.
Oh, that's lovely.
And this was what I appreciated about him, and because of that, both him and Mrs. Mino, I just couldn't leave the WCTU. No matter how it did add an extra level to my life, an extra busy level to my life, but it was so enjoyable to be with them and to be committed to what they were committed to that it was never crossed me to leave. Some of my friends thought I was too busy, but I never could leave because of that, because of the way I saw their commitment to the WCT, and I started feeling the same way they were to getting into the places where we could talk to people about getting themselves out of the drug and the alcohol addiction, and of course they expanded into other things, especially the young women and abortions and things like that. It became my heartbeat.
It's so much a heart of the Lord too, and what I'm feeling is that you actually got the joy of their service, the joy in the Lord of serving His broken children and ministering them.
Yes, that they
wonderful.
You knew that they were people of God. There was no question about it.
Because they're
loved.
loved.
The way they handled everything. Yes.
Wow, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a testimony. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm sure their hearts are glowing right now.
Yes.
And
yes, well, I too joined the WCTU when it was at 730 Yonge Street. The Minos had a real compassionate heart, especially for anything to do with families and drugs and alcohol and brokenness amongst people. And Mrs. Mino was president of the District of Toronto's WCTU. She also served as president of Ontario WCTU and the Canadian WCTU and a vice president on the World WCTU. And as president of the Toronto District WCTU, she was in charge of a portfolio of $3 million. And people would come and ask for donations. And she was always very, very careful with the money. But she really helped a lot of organizations where they were dealing with people with brokenness.
Wow.
And sometimes they would be coming and they would be sharing their stories, and she would just be weeping because her heart was so, having lost a daughter herself, her heart was very tender. And she was very concerned about family and about teaching children and teaching youth. In 1967, the Ontario WCTU began a project, and I think she was very instrumental, if I'm not mistaken, in this project, which was called Youth-A-Rama, and later became Youth Alive, where they would take a group of teenagers to a camp for a whole weekend, give them a really good time, but really put into them the evils of alcohol and other drugs. I later became involved with that when it became Youth Alive, and we used to have it at Teen Ranch in Caledon. And the Minos had bought a van, or not the Minos, but Mrs. Mino had distributed the money to buy a van for a church in the Jane and Finch area, which is very high crime and very high gang and shootings and those kinds of things. And this little church was able to take that van and bring in all kinds of youth.
Wow.
And Youth Alive used to cost us around $6,000 to $7,000 every year, but we only ever charged $25 for the youth.
Wow.
And she was also very, very much in teaching children. And through her efforts, many health books would come in. We used to have a contest for poster art and for health books and for essays. And she would go and she would sit with the children and they would do the health books or they would do the posters. Or we had speech contests with little pins. And she was very concerned about every stage of a person's life, whether they were a child, whether they were an adult that was bound by alcohol, but she really felt that we had to reach the youth and children before they got into things that they shouldn't.
So important, so important.
She was also one of the ones that headed the decision to restore several banners, which later became a major exhibit at the Textile Museum of Toronto, and then later at the Museum of Civilization in Hall, Quebec.
Oh.
And so she was one of the ones that was instrumental in seeing that job got done. And just whatever Mrs. Mino could do to get the word out, she was very concerned with family life and with families.
Well, it just seems to me as you're talking that really Frances's interest in the WCTU is just another level of Lloyd's ministry.
Yes.
So from going from the churches into the trenches, if you will, to really where the people are and you know, the people actually really need that help.
Yes.
So it just makes me feel more strongly how important that is. And you know, I want to tell you thank you for your service, because this is a battleground just as it is in Iraq or Afghanistan.
Yes.
And you are doing a wonderful service for us. My daughter was at one point one of these children that you are helping, and I praise God for anybody who, you know, came up and said anything nice to her or put their arm around her, or, you know, because I couldn't be there, but I knew God was there and God could use your hands. So,
well, we were both mentored by the Minos.
Yes.
Really?
Yes, we were
Wow.
mentored by them.
Yeah, honestly, when I look at that, I see the woman who started the WCTU.
Yes.
When I think of Mrs. Mino, I don't think of her in this century. I think of her in the century of the woman when WCTU was first began, because she had that empowerment. She had that
spirit.
That spirit. Yes.
The spirit,
Yes.
really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of the love and the grace and the joy and the peace
Yes,
too.
and to, I mean, even at their ages, to put in what they put in. They used to do the plowing matches
Yeah,
And, you know,
that's true.
wherever there were people to talk to or to be reached, they were there
With a pamphlet.
with pamphlets,
When I think
information.
of Reverend Mino, I just see him with a
Oh, yes.
literature.
Being informed, that's
yes,
so
educate
much,
yourself,
yes,
yes.
a huge part of it.
So it was, no task was too great for them.
Or too small.
Or too small. But I mean, as far as time-wise, as far as giving up themselves.
Yes, and they did that.
They did it all.
Wow.
They did it all. They
Wow.
were really very dedicated couple, dedicated to each other, as we have also heard today, about what a lovely, loving couple that they were, and they were.
They were so quietly.
He was very proud of her.
Yeah.
He was very proud of her.
And you can see in them being being able to and join in teamwork that they were able to do a greater work in union together and of course being in agreement with God. But so
if God were not in it,
it wouldn't be.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they lived the life. They didn't just tell it.
No.
They lived the life.
And I think then in your saying that even for people who they hadn't even gone out and met, they role modeled. Like if you had a chance to see, my brother did the presentation in the beginning, how their light just shone from them. And so I think you can walk past somebody and God can touch that person's heart. And I think, for me, that's what I think about Lloyd is that that light touched people wherever he went, even if he didn't say a word, even if he didn't look at somebody. God is able to, so.
He had that presence when he walked into a room. He had that presence.
And you could see that on when he's on Buddy.
On the hook.
He loved Buddy. He told me one day how much he loved that horse.
Tell me about Buddy. Everybody has a different story.
I had forgotten about it was called Dynamite, but he told me he had a terrible time with that horse. But he said, I love that horse. Like, he just really loved his horse.
Do you have any Buddy thing?
He told me some stories, but I can't remember the stories.
Funny stories.
I have the funny story.
Okay.
I have the funny story. I really can't recall any of them, but I could just...
But I can see it on your face.
Yeah. Anytime I saw him, I knew I was coming. Something was going to hit me.
Oh, that's great.
Do you know why? No, everybody, why? And then he starts.
No,
but I have a feeling you're going to tell me, right?
Right.
We were a wonderful couple.
Yeah.
And it has left a void in the WCTU. It really has.
Well, I pray that God will fill that void. He will.
We need people, and
we
it's an
need
important
men.
message.
We need men,
and women.
They're social members, the men are.
Yes.
And of course, like Gina said, they don't have a vote, but they're there. We treasure their comments and the information they can provide for us. So, because it's I mean, you know, it takes two.
Their support
to bring the thing together.
Right.
So especially in these days, because life is so different from the past, where the woman was able to do everything, and then we need the men to give us some.
And you also need the men as role models for any of the children and people. Right.
There's a big void.
Okay.
We're from Toronto. There's a lot of there's a fatherless generation. You know. And there's just nobody filling the gap.
Even fathers who are actually present in children's lives, but they're not there. They're absent.
Yes, I think it came across, I think it was Judy or someone that said that every night he was home for dinner, no matter how busy he was.
Yeah, right.
And the family devotion.
And the family devotion, and that's so important, but it seems to be lost in most homes.
Yeah, I think the men, Satan is just, you know, focusing on the men and attacking them, and so it's up to the women, and the women can pray for and encourage the men and bring them back and help them to be a part of, you know, being on the right side and knowing and loving the Lord and making His presence known. Well, thank you so very, very much. I really appreciate it. Yes,
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, and I have a feeling I could probably,
we
could go on for another.
Where are you from?
I'm going to